Welcome back to another episode of the Diabetes Digital Podcast presented by Food Heaven. Today we have a mini-sode for you, and this is a very interesting fun fact that many people don't believe is real until they try it for themselves. And that fact is that, yes, cooking and cooling your carbs actually can help with your blood sugar spikes. I know it sounds crazy, but let me explain.
Welcome to the Diabetes Digital Podcast. I'm Wendy.
And I'm Jess, and we're best friends, registered dietitians, and diabetes educators.
Through our telehealth platform, diabetesdigital.co, we offer accessible and personalized virtual nutrition counseling for people with diabetes and prediabetes.
Visit diabetesdigital.co, that's C-O, to book your first appointment. We accept insurance and offer affordable self-pay options. Now, let's get into today's episode.
So if you've been on TikTok, you have seen a lot of TikTokers talk about cold potatoes or leftover rice being a, quote, blood sugar hack. And we're going to dive into why there is evidence to support this and what exactly you have to do to get the benefits. Okay, so let me start with what is resistant starch. Resistant starch is a special type of carbohydrate that resist digestion in the small intestine. So instead of breaking down into glucose right away, it moves into the colon where it's fermented by gut bacteria. And that fermentation process changes how your body responds to it, meaning it's digested more slowly. It typically causes a smaller, more gradual rise in blood sugar. It may support gut health and improve satiety, and it may gently support insulin sensitivity over time. So think of resistant starch almost as fiber's cousin, where it has similar benefits to fiber, but different mechanisms. So how does resistant starch work in the body? Well, kind of similar to what I just mentioned, because it isn't broken down into glucose right away, it doesn't spike blood glucose as quickly. And the fermentation process produces what we call short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which are great for your gut and metabolic health. And everyone responds differently to anything really, including this. So some people might see noticeable improvements in blood glucose and others might see smaller shifts. But typically people do see a shift if they experiment with like trying, let's say, potatoes, without the resistant starch method versus with, like they'll see a shift in their blood glucose. So let's talk about types of resistant starch, because I'm sure by now you're like, ooh, that sounds really exciting. And whenever I mention this to a patient, like this is the one thing, let's say we're working together for like 15 sessions. This is like the one thing that they remember and that they're so excited about. So I'm excited too, so I get it. So types of resistant starch. There's naturally occurring resistant starch, and then there's resistant starch that's formed by cooking and cooling. The naturally occurring resistant starch is found in foods like beans, lentils, peas, and green bananas, so underripe bananas. And the resistant starch that's formed by cooking and cooling is found in your starches like potatoes, rice, pasta, and oats. Okay? So here's how you increase your resistant starch. Cook and cool your starches. If you have time, by the way, you don't have to do this, but if you're like, oh, I really want something simple, and let's say you're like me and you're a meal prepper, it's great because you're already cooking and cooling your starches. So if you're cooking rice, potatoes, or pasta, cook them, let them cool. Overnight gives the biggest effect because it starts to build more resistant starch. And then you can reheat them or eat them cold, and reheating still keeps much of the resistant starch. So the real thing that's happening is the cooking and the cooling. And just in case you don't know this, because I feel like a lot of people don't, my husband doesn't, never put hot food in the fridge. This is like a side note because it can breed foodborne illness. And so you always want to, let's say you make a big pot of like pasta or whatever it is. Either way, you want to cool it, make sure it's fully cooled, and then put it in the fridge. But this process also helps with resistant starch. With the bananas, so a slightly underripe bananas also have resistant starch. So green to lightly yellow have more resistant starch in them. So for me, for example, I love bananas in my smoothie. And they still taste sweet to me, whether or not they're like super yellow or, yellow green. So I'll try to buy some yellow green ones to include in my smoothie. So I'm naturally getting more resistant starch that way. I also mentioned overnight oats. So soaking your oats will increase resistant starch, right? Because you're soaking them, and the process of soaking is it's similar to cooking all of these foods, rice, potatoes, pasta. You're kind of soaking them in water, whether it's with heat or not with heat. So that is going to increase the resistant starch, the overnight oats. So again, a meal prep hack is to make extra rice or potatoes and store it in the fridge for lunches the next day. So just to wrap, I want to share a really cool study that we looked at. It's from 2023. It's a systemic review article, which is what you want to look at, a meta-analysis, because it's looking at many different studies. And it's titled A Comparison of the Effects of Resistant Starch Types on Glycemic Responses in Individuals with Type 2 Diabetes or Prediabetes, which this is like the perfect study for Diabetes Digital, because this is literally our patient population. It had like 4 findings, which is just pretty much going to reiterate what I said. So number 1 is research shows that resistant starch can actually make your post-meal blood sugar rise more gently. So instead of getting that sharp spike after eating, you might see a slower, softer rise, especially those living with type 2 diabetes or prediabetes. The meta-analysis also found that not all resistant starch is the same. Foods like beans, lentils, and slightly underripe bananas have more of it. And then there are foods like rice, potatoes, and pasta that develop resistant starch when you cook and cool them, like leftovers or meal prep. And third, some people even saw improvements in their fasting numbers when they ate more resistant starch over time. So it's not a dramatic overnight change, but it could be a gentle nudge in the right direction for you if you're struggling with your fasting. Like, definitely just try to incorporate more of these foods and see how your body responds. And fourth, it's important to say that resistant starch isn't going to magically drop your A1C. The impacts are more on your day-to-day blood sugar patterns, especially after meals, rather than those long-term markers. Now, if you're doing it day-to-day, maybe that would affect your long-term markers, right? Especially if it's going to affect your fasting numbers. That might in turn affect your A1C, but it's not that you're going to, have a banana that has resistant starch one day a week, and then that's going to dramatically drop your A1C magically. So just want to set expectations. But I think this is really cool. And I try to incorporate this as much as I can, not always. And sometimes I just want a banana that's not slightly green because I do. So that's fine too. Or whether it's like a sweet plantain. So take of this what you will, leave what you don't want to do, and that's fine. And if you're looking for a dietitian who can work with you to maybe incorporate more resistant starch or just have a blood glucose management strategy or even general wellness, definitely check us out, diabetesdigital.co, that's .co/quiz. We have a quiz. It takes 15 seconds, 20 seconds to do. And you can book an appointment right away. And then we will verify your insurance benefits. Most people don't pay anything out of pocket because we're in network with all the major insurance payers, including Medicare, and then Alameda Alliance, which is Medicaid in the Bay Area in California, which we're so excited about that. That's new. It took us a long time to get a network. So definitely all y'all Bay Area people who have Alameda Alliance, hit us up because you guys typically have unlimited visits, as do most of the insurance companies. United typically has unlimited. Aetna typically has 26 in a year. Medicare, we're able to get unlimited for diabetes and chronic kidney disease. What else? Cigna. For Cigna folks, typically you guys start with 3 free visits and then you might have a copay after that. But sometimes we're able to get unlimited, and Blue Cross Blue Shield varies per plan. Okay, so I hope that this was helpful for you, and we will catch you next time. Bye.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode. If you're interested in nutrition counseling with one of our expert dietitians to help improve your prediabetes or diabetes, visit us at diabetesdigital.co.
Also, if you found our conversation helpful, do us a favor and rate and review this podcast on iTunes, plus share with someone who might find this helpful. You can also connect with us on Instagram at diabetesdigital.co.
And tune in every Wednesday for practical, inclusive, and culturally humble diabetes insights. We'll catch you later. Bye.